Yeah, so thanks again, Louis, for having me. My case study really focuses on viral vector supply, manufactured at a CDMO, and this was for a commercial autologous cell therapy company that I had previously worked for. Facing supply constraints on multiple fronts, it was kind of a perfect storm. So three-pronged here. The first of which was analytical testing. We were seeing a high invalid rate on one test and a reagent supply issue on another, which was creating a deep backlog for disposition of this viral vector material. In addition to that, at our contract manufacturer, to a much lesser degree of severity, but we're seeing some issues with manufacturing success. We did have an aborted run, and while in and of itself was not a major issue, it just was, adding to the constraints on lead time. And then lastly, because this was a commercial cell therapy product that the vector was used in, the mitigation plan ultimately included a number of different changes, some of which had regulatory reporting across a number of jurisdictions. And as some of you who work in the commercial space may be familiar with, that can cause quite a bit of complexity when it comes to variation management. So we were using this viral vector in our internal cell processing plant, and being able to bring it into the plant and use it on a jurisdiction by jurisdiction basis turned out to be quite complex. So the potential impact that we would have faced with this issue, should have we stocked out a viral vector, was kind of multifaceted. Of course, failure to supply the market and maximize patient outcomes. Obviously, everything we do is in the best interest of the patients. Would have prompted discussions with health agencies on failure to supply, and cast a negative spotlight on us. And as we ultimately saw with a number of our competitors facing similar issues, could have led even to headlines in the news, tarnished reputation with clinicians, right, and of course lower revenue. So the key here was to map out a game plan for how could we tackle these issues independently and concurrently before we face stock out. The first thing I would emphasize is, supply chain is a team sport. We assembled a SWAT team of highly accountable and focused SMEs, people with knowledge of the analytics side, people with knowledge of IT and how to manage product variation, and then, of course, people on the manufacturing side as well. Proactive risk and change management, that planning was paramount. So we developed a rank-ordered mitigation plan that was stratified by, ease of implementation and effectiveness or impact in terms of how much forward coverage of supply a given implementation or mitigation would bring. Third, mapped out a high-level project plan. Obviously, very important because this was a multifaceted issue, to clearly define work streams and a plan of attack, and make sure that the project team was focused and clear on, what they were working on and what needed to be executed. And then lastly, I think, the last kind of hallmark that led to resolution here was sharing the why and creating awareness, both internally and externally. So internally, it was imperative that we communicated this issue and the potential impact, stock out of a commercial product, through the highest levels of the technical operations organization. That was really important to assure that we had adequate support, and as well as, establish a robust communication plan that made sure that this topic was kept top of mind amongst a number of competing priorities, and making sure the executive team, continued to have the awareness of the impact and the progress. Externally, it was also very imperative to share for a number of reasons. Obviously, we needed to partner closely with the contract test lab that was doing the testing, the contract manufacturing organization that was doing the manufacturing, gather their insight into some of our proposed mitigation plans, what would it take, and ensure that we had buy-in at the highest levels of their organization, and sharing the potential impact should we stock out to them and their business and their bottom line. So that was also equally effective, and built a lot of collaboration between these organizations. Ultimately, I won't go into the details of each, mitigation and the overall plan, but it took about 6 months to relieve the supply constraint. and build up and release enough safety stock of this vector through all the mitigations. Ultimately, we narrowly avoided stock out. Some of the changes just at a high level included tech transferring in one of the methods that was problematic, optimizing another method and some of the reagents there, both of which were post-approval changes, and then building a variation management business process. The story does have it was a win in that we didn't stock out and were able to serve patients, but it also has a silver lining in that many of these mitigations either served as long-term corrective actions and really built some robustness into these methods, or in other cases highlighted the need and prioritization for further next-gen solutions, especially around the product variation management, going from more of a manual to a true IT solution.
Wow, that is complicated, it kind of, and to say the least, involving many different people, probably many personalities, some more calm than others. It involved different parts of the organization, different external organizations, different levels of the organization. And it goes, Adam, to a couple of questions that we had about management. So, who managed, was there a top looking down and across everything? What a management accomplishment if you did successfully mitigate the situation here. How was that managed?
Yeah, so it was managed through the SWAT team that I mentioned, right? We were ultimately responsible for defining the mitigation plan, giving the awareness, and following through on execution, and sharing updates along the way. But as I mentioned, it was key. This went all the way up to the head of tech ops at a fairly large organization, with weekly newsletter updates and monthly check-ins throughout a 6-month process, which was so important for just ensuring that we had everything we need, that we had, the people on the SWAT team, they have day jobs, right? But that they were prioritizing this process, this project, and focused on, achieving this goal. As Susan mentioned earlier around, I think there was a question around, well, how could you front load these costs? It's like the other side of it was not an option. Stocking out, in our case, a vector, not being able to supply the market, treat patients with a potentially curative therapy, was just a non-starter for us. So it really warranted that much visibility.